Do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Yes, and here's why.
Are you ready? Hey noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and it seems like it is time for some space invaders. So unless you live under a rock, you must have heard about the situation concerning Mr. Grusch, or David Grusch, who is this whistleblower who has allegedly got proof that aliens exist, and not only they exist, but they have landed or perhaps even crashed, more on that later, on this planet, and the US government has been retrieving alien aircrafts for a better part of a couple of decades, and perhaps even some biologicals. So I thought to myself, how about I make a video and share my thoughts on this whole situation, also because I might have something to bring to the table that could be interesting. But the first thing I'd like to bring to the table is, of course, a hefty dose of skepticism. Now, of course, this isn't the first time in history whereby someone has come forth and said either they've been abducted or that they've seen aliens, that had first encounters, that they're a UFO, and all the rest of it. And in the majority of these cases, I would just be dismissing. But at least in this time, I think one of the reasons why this situation might be worth of our attention is the fact that this Mr. Grusch is a former high-end officer or intelligence officer, which of course gives him more credibility when compared to the usual whistleblowers who tend to be, I don't know, like some kind of drunk lorry driver. Also, in this picture, he looks like an alien. So there is that. And the reason why I decided to talk about this today with you, first is because it's fun, and second is because, well, he appeared in front of Congress and he gave a statement under oath. Loads of YouTubers and of course TikTokers out there talking about this, but I think the first thing we need to say is, well, let's proceed with logic, in the sense that the simple fact that he is under oath doesn't mean that he's not gonna lie. It just means that if he does lie, then he will have repercussions for it. Nor do we know really what's behind this man. So as I was saying, yes, of course, the fact that he's a former intelligence officer and someone with high levels of credentials does at least give him an audience in Congress, I suppose. But that doesn't automatically mean that he doesn't need to bring in some proof, and proof is what we need. Evidence. But I'd like to entertain the thought for a moment, because can you imagine if they made like a massive announcement from the White House and they said, next week we will present to you evidence that actual intelligent biologicals, like actual aliens, are here, and the aliens will talk to us. And there you go, you wait for a week and the alien appears, starts speaking to the entire world, and his first words are, get rid of TikTok. Now, there are a lot of points I'd like to make today, so let's go. One of the points that was brought forth in Congress was the fact that thousands of pilots have seen UFOs. But I'd like to underline the fact that UFO just means unidentified flying object. It doesn't automatically mean that it's non-human in nature. It just means that our technology cannot explain it.
The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had.
Or that specific pilot couldn't identify it. So simply because there is a UFO sighting, even if that were confirmed, it doesn't automatically translate into alien. It's possible. I always say, keep an open mind, but it's not automatic. We need evidence. It could be human tech that we are not aware of, either from the government or from an enemy power.
Do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Yes, and here's why.
And this is the part that I think is worth our time. Even if this was an alien, if former Navy officers and professional military pilots said that they saw something that they can't explain, it could pose a threat, so it should be investigated. But let's keep an open mind and say, what if it is actual alien tech? What if what some of these pilots have seen are actual UFOs piloted by aliens? And don't get me wrong, I mean, I would love to see something like that. Then we go to the second step. The second point, which is the idea that there is a highly secret government program of retrieval of some of these UFOs, and already the US government is in possession of some of these machines.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General.
And so the question is, how did they get a hand of some of these machines? And the idea is, well, maybe they crashed or crash landed onto the planet. And here's a little problem that I have with this. If an alien species is so advanced that they can traverse the galaxy, which means that they have an understanding of science, technology, the laws of physics, the second law of thermodynamics, that we do not understand. Like what they do, what they know, it makes us look like primitives. So if they are so advanced that they can traverse the galaxy, who knows where from freaking Orion, then they reach Earth and they crash, Personally, to me, the idea of pilot error and the thing falls on the Earth and then we happen to find it and study it sounds very unlikely. And the only scenario in which I could see that happen, which I haven't seen any of the other YouTubers or TikTokers mention it, I wonder why, but the only scenario in which I could see that happen is if they are shooting each other. Like if something happens between them that we don't know and one of these crafts then does end up on the Earth as a result of that. Or they did it on purpose for whatever reason that we don't know. Like, I'd rather believe that than the alien pilot is an idiot or that their machine broke down. But that's just my 2 cents.
Pilots and intelligence officers describe to lawmakers not only what they've seen in our skies, but what they claim the government knows about unidentified aircrafts.
But now let's have a look at the possible motives for him bringing forth this situation. What does he have to gain? Well, according to him, he's doing it because he believes the public should know. So he's doing it out of concern for his fellow man. Now, this is interesting, but then again, if this is a cover-up of the highest level, why did they let him do it? Why wouldn't the government shut him up? And the only way I can respond to that is either they know that he's full of it and so it doesn't really matter, it will blow over. Or, if this is true, they know he's gonna say it because they wanted him to. In which case he wouldn't really be a whistleblower, would he? And on that note, during the hearing he said he does have proof, but he can't show it to the public. He's not allowed to. He's only going to show it after the hearing directly to the congressmen. If you are a whistleblower and you're only doing it for the public, why are you literally following protocol? Unless that's what you were told to say. And after saying all this, what is my take? What is my opinion? Do I think that something is going on? Or do I think that this is just a farce? I do always leave a little window open into my mind saying, you know, maybe. But I never take things at face value. For now, it's just a guy saying stuff. And that's what it is. I'm intrigued, but not alarmed. But there is something I can bring to the table. If you have watched my video on angels and the truth about angels in the Bible, how they're actually described, you already know kind of where I'm coming from. If you haven't, I would highly suggest you to go check that one out. Of course, link in the description. But I'll tell you this. The reason why I leave a small little window open to the possibility of extraterrestrials arriving on Earth and interacting with humanity is because, first, mathematically, it's possible that, considering how big the universe is, that there are alien life forms out there. Now, have they interacted with us? As I've mentioned on this video, I'm open to the possibility of some aliens hundreds of thousands of years ago or tens of thousands of years ago reaching Earth, but there is no proof right now. But there is one thing that does make you think, and I always love entertaining it as a thought exercise, if anything. And that is the fact that when you read ancient books in the original language, which is something I do have access to thanks to my academic studies, whether it be Latin, ancient Greek, or biblical Hebrew, there are some descriptions that when you read them in the original language, not in the translated version, but the original language, it does sound like they're talking about aliens. Let me give you a couple of examples of these. For instance, here is a passage by Tacitus from History chapter 5 verse 13. He's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem and he says, "Prodigies had occurred, which this nation, prone to superstition, but hating all religious rites, did not deem it lawful to expiate by offering and sacrifice. There had been seen hosts joining battle in the skies, the fiery gleam of arms, the temple illuminated by sudden radiance from the clouds. The doors of the inner shrine were suddenly thrown open, and a voice of more than mortal tone was heard to cry that the gods were departing. At the same instant, there was a mighty stir as of departure." On a similar note, we can read from Flavius Josephus, who is one of the main sources for the Jewish wars in ancient Rome. And on Book 5, he says, "Thus there was a star resembling a sword, which stood over the city, and a comet that continued a whole year. And at the 9th hour of the night, so great a light shone round the altar and the holy house, that it appeared to be bright daytime, which lasted for half an hour. A certain prodigious and incredible phenomenon appeared. I suppose the account of it would seem to be a fable, were it not related by those that saw it. For, before sunsetting, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen running about among the clouds and surrounding of cities. Moreover, at that feast, which we will call Pentecost, as the priests were going by night into the inner court of the temple, as their custom was, to perform their sacred ministrations, they said that, in the first place, they felt a quaking, and heard a great noise, and after that they heard a sound, as of great multitude saying, Let us remove hence. one of the things you will have noticed is that these events, they happened in Jerusalem and they have to do with the temple. So if this is something that happened to the Jews, why aren't they mentioning it in the Bible? And the thing is, they are the exact same stuff. It's just that if you read it in English, because of some translation choices, it's there, but it's hidden. So let me show it to you. Once again, do not misunderstand my message here. We're just having fun with the literal translation, that's all this is. Ezekiel 3:12. Then the Spirit lifted me up, and I heard behind me a loud rumbling sound as the glory of the Lord rose from the place where it was standing. Now, the word that we find translated as glory, meaning the glory of God or the glory of the Lord, in the Bible, it has many possible translation and definitions in biblical Hebrew. The word being kavod. Sure, it can mean glory, it can mean honor, it can also mean something heavy, like a heavy object. That is one of the possible translations. So let's try and read the passage again, but this time let's substitute the word glory with a more literal translation, heavy object. Then the wind lifted me up, and I heard behind me a loud rumbling sound as the heavy object of Yahweh rose from the place where it was standing. Now to this let's add the story, once again in the Bible, where the prophet asks God to show him his glory, his heavy object. As he's speaking to the Lord, Moses said, "Please show me your glory." And the Lord said, "I will cause all of my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name." But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live." Then the Lord said, "There is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock, and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen." Then what actually happens is that Moses is impatient, and just a split second after the glory had passed, he actually looks and his face is burnt. So according to these passages, when the Lord is asked by Moses to show his heavy object, he doesn't have it with him, but he says, "Tomorrow, I'll show you. I will cause my heavy object to pass in front of you, but you must be behind a rock, because if you're in front of my heavy object, you're dead. You can only look at it from the back." Isn't it strange that God doesn't have his glory with him and needs to go and get it, and then when God arrives with his glory, which by the way makes a lot of wind and a lot of noise, you need to hide yourself behind a rock or it will burn you. So the glory burns you, but a rock protects you from it. Okay, but where is the connection to the temple from the previous authors? Well, the Bible tells us that the tabernacle that was built by Solomon, which took him 7 years to build, was built according to the specifications that he was given by the Lord, so that it may receive his glory. Talking about size, shape, and materials. Let's read it. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the heavy object of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting, because the cloud settled on it, and the heavy object of the Lord filled the tabernacle. When Solomon finished praying, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offerings and the sacrifices, and the heavy object of the Lord filled the temple. And the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the heavy object of the Lord filled his temple. Now connect that to the fact that even in modern Hebrew, if you write kavod on Google and write kavod weapon, you know what you get? It's the name of an AR-15. It's a weapon manufacturer. And why would there be a connection between the heavy object and a weapon? Nations will fear the name of the Lord, and all of the kings of the earth will fear your heavy object. The connection that some people make is, well, Sodom and Gomorrah did sound like they got nuked from the skies. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. And he saw then smoke rising from the land, like smoke from a furnace. The whole land will be a burning waste of salt and sulfur, nothing planted, nothing sprouting, no vegetation growing on it. And the heavy object of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the 7th day the Lord called to Moses from within the cloud. To the Israelites, the heavy object of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. She named the boy Ichabod, saying, "The heavy object has departed from Israel." While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked towards the desert, and there was the heavy object of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord our God has shown us his heavy object and his majesty. Now the appearance of the heavy object of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. Lord, I love the house where you live, the place where your heavy object dwells. Okay, but if the Bible says this in the original language, then wouldn't like the Catholic Church know a thing or two about this? Why aren't they doing anything about this? I mean, they can read. Obviously, they have some of the best scholars. So they've got the Bible, they've got the original language, they can read this stuff, so why aren't they doing anything about it? Well, wouldn't you know it, the Vatican has got its own space observatory, one of the oldest astronomical research institutions in the world, and they spent a significant amount of money to build a few things. There is the Vatican Observatory, which is located on the grounds of the papal summer residence in Castel Gandolfo, and then they built a Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, which is located in Arizona, a Gregorian telescope observing in the optical and infrared situated on Mount Graham, and they have been pointing it at the sky ever since. Once again, I'm not trying to convince you that aliens are out there, I'm not trying to convince you that the Bible is actually speaking about aliens, not at all. I'm just saying, I'm someone who can read these things in the original language, and they do make you think, because when you read them literally, it does make it sound like we're talking about some form of aliens. I'm not trying to put on a tinfoil hat and telling you guys it's the aliens all along. I mean, I think History Channel is doing that and they're taking care of that kind of stuff. I'm just sharing something because it's interesting to read and to talk about. But I think it's only right for me to at least let you have access to these things that you might not have because you might not be able to read the original languages. And I think it's fun that I put it all on the table and then we can all have our chance to say, I think this is a pile of rubbish, but it's fun to talk about. Or perhaps someone could say, no, I think there might be something to it. To each his own. I like giving people the opportunity to make their mind, having all information presented. And putting that in connection with the fact that a lot of angelic beings, like cherubs, sound like they are actually made of metal, like machines are. They make a constant hum, they never sleep, and they produce wind and noise when they arrive, as I mentioned on that video. I also watched a video by Critical, who talked about this. Great hair, bro. And one of the things he said is that he believes that it's possible that this was done for distraction. And I think, yeah, that could also be true. The idea being, keep the people distracted with this alien situation, but in reality the government is doing something else and they don't want the public to notice it. What could it be? He was bringing forth the idea of maybe they want to use this as an excuse for saying, hey, if there are aliens, we need to build stronger and more efficient defense systems. And in reality, maybe they're doing it because they're building these defense systems and, you know, justify a lot of money being put into it. In reality, they're doing it against other government, but they want the excuse. And to that I say, it's very interesting. Of course, we have no idea, no way to know. Although I do have to say that once again, if this is a highly advanced species and it was actually true that these aliens reached the Earth, if they have that technology, there's no defense system that humans could build up that would work against such a highly advanced species. And the way I say that is because when we look at history, for example, when the Europeans at the end of the late Middle Ages reached the New World and they met the Aztecs stopped existing. And of course, being a little bit of a history buff, I am fully aware that it's not just a matter of technological gap, but there was the whole pandemic situation. But you know what I mean. A highly advanced civilization meets a very primitive civilization. It's no game. It's called asymmetrical warfare, if it's a warfare scenario. Anyways, is this guy real? Is this guy being paid to say all of this? Or maybe he was just told stuff, but the original people were liars who told him about it, and there is no aliens, there is no conspiracy. Who knows? I'm gonna look forward to see if this thing goes anywhere, or if it just blows over as, once again, make-believe. But as always, I'm interested in what you think. Let me know in the comments below. Looking forward to reading your comments. As always, thank you so much for watching my channel, and remember, the Metatron spread his wings. Goodbye.